Look at dividing mixed numbers first today. And I have to make sure I sign in again. Always make sure that you sign in. Okay, divide. We have some mixed numbers. Multiplying and dividing are very similar because we never divide fractions. So what we actually do is KFC to change the division into multiplication. Okay, so first thing I want to do again is rock around the clock. I'm going to multiply 4 times 10, which is 40. Then I'm going to add 7, which is 47. And that's over my denominator of 10. The second fraction, it's actually the exact same thing. So when I rock around the clock, I get the same thing. 47 over 10. So hopefully you're thinking, well, something divided by itself, that's going to be a pretty simple answer. That's just going to be 1. And to show you how that works, I will actually do the KFC. So we'll keep the first fraction, we'll flip the second fraction, and we'll change division to multiplication. Okay? And I always look to see if I can cancel before I actually multiply. 10 goes into 10 once, 10 goes into 10 once, 47 goes into 47 once, and the same thing down here. So when I multiply, I get 1 over 1, which just equals 1. Okay, if you could see that from the beginning, that 4 7/10 divided by itself was 1. You certainly don't have to go through all the steps and actually do the division. You could just enter the answer of 1. Okay, but I did want to show you that why it works as well. Okay, the next one, 2 mixed numbers again. They're not the same thing. So we're actually going to have to go through the steps of, of dividing. So we'll rock around the clock. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So we get 7 over 2. Rock around the clock on the second one. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So I get 4/3, and that is division. Okay, I'm going to KFC once more. Nice thing about multiplying and dividing is we don't need a common denominator. We keep the first fraction, we flip the second one, and we change it from division to multiplication. Then I look and see if there's anything I can cross, cancel, or any fractions that I can simplify. There's not anything, so I just multiply across. 7 times 3 is 21. 2 times 4 is 8. I get 21 over 8. I have to see if I can reduce this. There's nothing I can reduce, but it says I need to answer as a proper fraction. So I have to do some long division here. I need to do the top number divided by the bottom number to change it into a mixed number, so it's not improper. 8 goes into 21 2 times evenly, which gives us 16. Subtract, we get 5. So it'd be 2 5/8 would be my answer. Okay, and that's what I need to plug in. Two and 5/8, and we got. Let's try another one. 2 3/4 divided by 1 1/2. So again, first step, rock around the clock. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 3 is 11 over 4. 1 times 2 is 2. Plus 1 is 3. So it's 3 over 2. And we are dividing. That is division. Now again, we're going to KFC. Keep the first one. Flip the second one. And change it to multiplication. See if there's anything I can cancel. Well, there is here because 2 goes into 4. 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 4 twice. And there's nothing I can cancel with 11 and 3. So then I multiply across. 11 times 1 is 11. 2 times 3 is 6. That is improper again because the bigger number is on top. So I need to divide. 6 goes into 11 once. 1 times 6 is 6. Subtract, I get 5. 5 out of 6. So it'd be 1 and 5/6 would be my final answer. Let's try another one. Okay, the number line shows an unknown number D. Is 5D positive or negative? Okay, so if I look at D, it's to the left of 0, so it's going to be a negative number. Okay, if I take a negative, whatever number it is, times a positive 5, will that be a positive or negative? Well, it would be an odd number of negative signs, which from our notes from before, if you have an odd number of negative signs, it makes your answer negative. So that would be negative. Okay, V in this case, again, it's to the left of 0, so it's going to be negative. If I take a negative V times a positive 4, again, I'll have a negative number of negative sign, or sorry, an odd number of negative signs, which will make my answer negative. All right, this one, T is to the right of 0, so it's going to be positive. So if I take a positive times a positive, that's simply going to be a positive number. Okay, let's try just one more of those. Again, R is to the left of 0, so that's going to be a negative. So I have a negative 2 times a negative R. I have an even number of negative signs, which is going to make it positive. Okay, this one is talking about properties. Which property is shown? Okay, I have the same numbers in the same order. The only thing that's different is they moved the parentheses. So in this, on the left side, I would multiply 2 and 7 first. On the right side, I would multiply 9 and 2 first. Okay, that is an example of associative property. Okay, what two numbers am I putting together first does not affect what two numbers I multiply second. Okay, again, which property of addition is shown? Now this time they actually flip the order of the numbers. Okay, first it's 2 plus 5 on the left, then on the right side it's 5 plus 2. Okay, when you actually flip them around, that's an example of commutative property. It means you can change the order, but you're still going to get the same answer. Okay, again, we have numbers in the same order, we just moved the parentheses. So on the left side, I would add 7 and 4 first. On the right side, I would add 4 and 8 first. So that's just showing that whichever numbers you add first is not going to change the answer as long as you still add all three together. So that would be associative again, how you group the numbers, which two you add first. Okay, and then here we're flipping the order of the numbers. We have 2 times 7 on the left. On the right, we have 7 times 2. That is commutative property of multiplication. It means it doesn't matter what order the numbers are. When you multiply, you're going to get the same answer. Order of operations. Okay, remember, when we're looking at order of operations, we have, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That means parentheses first, then exponents, then multiplication or division, depending on which one you have, and lastly, addition and subtraction. So when I look at this, first thing I look at are the parentheses and what's inside the parentheses. So I have a negative 2 plus 7. Those are unlike, so I know I need to subtract. 7 minus 2 is 5. Keep the sign of the bigger number, which is positive. So I have negative 8 minus 5 squared. Then I do my exponents. 5 squared is the same as 5 times 5, which is 25. So I have negative 8 minus 25. And then I have addition and subtraction. These are like, so my rules, according to my rules, I need to add. So on the side I will add. And then I will keep the original sign. And that is my addition and subtraction rules, which we learned back on NS1. Okay? So my answer would be negative 33. We have some multiplication here, multiplication here. Okay, remember we need to do multiplication and division before we do addition and subtraction. So I'm going to look at these two numbers that are being multiplied and these two numbers that are being multiplied. I'm going to think of this negative as being a subtraction. So it's going to be a positive 4 times a negative 3, which is going to give me a negative 12. So I still have 1 minus and then negative 12. Then I'm going to add 8 times negative 3 is a negative 24. So I have negative 24 on the end. Now I'm going to use my addition and subtraction rules to do some simplifying. Two negatives next to each other becomes a positive. Positive and a negative next to each other, they're unlike. That becomes a negative. Now I can continue adding. 1 plus 12 is 13. 13 minus 24, they're unlike. So we're going to subtract. Gives me 11. Sign of the bigger number is negative, so it's going to be a negative 11. So I would plug in negative 11. Good. Next question. Okay, again, order of operations, we have to start with what's inside the parentheses. Here's another set of parentheses, but there's only one number inside of it. So there's nothing we can do there. But here, we have to do some subtracting and some multiplying. So we're going to start inside our parentheses. We have to multiply or divide first. So I'm going to multiply 6 times 5, which is 30. So I have 10 plus negative 9 minus 30 times negative 2. Okay, all I did was multiply 6 times 5. I'm going to look at these two numbers here inside the parentheses again, because I'm not finished with that yet. They are like, because they're both negative, so I'll add those. 30 plus 9 is 39. Keep the original sign, so it's negative 39. I still have my 10 plus in front, and I still have my times negative 2 on the end. Okay? Then remember, we have to do multiplication and division before addition and subtraction. So next, I have to do those two. Because I have to do multiplication before addition. So 39 times 2, two negatives will become a positive. 39 times 2 gives me 78. And I still have my 10 plus over there. 10 plus 78 gives me 88. So my answer is 88. Good. All right, next one. We will start with our parentheses. There's nothing we can do inside of there. There's only one number. Then we move to our exponents. Negative 10 squared would be negative 10 times negative 10. Two negatives will make a positive. 10 times 10 is 100. So that becomes a positive 100. This negative came from the negative that was outside of the parentheses. So now I have negative 8 minus 100. They are like, so I need to add those together. And the rule says keep the original sign. So I have to keep the negative. My answer is negative 108. Good. Okay, this one looks a little confusing and complicated at first, but once you do some simplifying, it's not too bad. We start with multiplication and division before addition and subtraction. So I have to do those two parts first. -7 times 7, an odd number of negatives is going to be negative. 7 times 7 is 49. Then I have 9 times, now this looks kind of crazy, -1 divided by -1. Two negatives, an even number of negatives becomes a positive. 1 divided by 1 is just 1. So that's simply 9 times 1, which is just 9. And then I have addition, -49 plus 9. Using my addition and subtraction rules, they're unlike. So I have to subtract, becomes 40. Keep the sign of the bigger number. Bigger number is 49, it's negative. So it becomes a -40. All right, we need to figure out which of the following expressions are equivalent to this. Okay, so we have all multiplication and one negative. So that's what we need to find down here. It has to be all multiplication and it has to end up to be negative. Okay, so I can see in the first one I have t minus s. That's not going to work because it's subtraction. I have to have all multiplication. Here I have s times -s times t. I have all multiplication. I have one negative or an odd number of negatives. So it's going to give me the same answer. Okay, again, I have all multiplication, an odd number of negatives, so my answer has to turn out to be negative. Here I have multiplication, odd number of negatives, it's going to work. Even though the parentheses are in a different place, it's not going to make a difference. When you multiply, you can multiply in any order, and you're going to get the same answer. Okay, same thing down here. I have all multiplication, one negative. They're in different order, but that doesn't matter. I'm still going to get the correct answer. Okay, again, all multiplication, an even number of negatives, so it's going to be positive. If I look at this first one, I have x minus x. I have subtraction. That's not going to work, so it can't be that one. Here I have x squared times y, and it's positive. This is an even number of negatives, which means it's positive, so this could be it. But I have x squared. If I take x times x, what is x times x? That is actually x squared. Okay? So it's just like if I have 5 times 5, I can write that as 5 squared. So x squared would take care of both the x's, and then I have a times y, and I have a times y, so that would work. Okay, I have one negative sign, an odd number of negatives, so it's going to be a negative answer. All multiplication, and I have 3 z's. Okay, so here I have -3z. So if I did z times z times z, could that be written as 3z? That would actually be z cubed. Okay, if I did 2 times 2 times 2, that would be the same as 2 cubed. It would not be 3 times 2. Okay, so this first one will not work because it would actually have to be an exponent of 3 in order for it to work, but it's not. Then down here I have multiplication, I have 3 z's, I have an odd number of negatives, so it's going to give me a negative answer. That one does work. And that's all. Happy practicing.